So let's talk about property buying. Now, I put up a story here on my YouTube channel as well as on Instagram asking you guys for video suggestion. And one of the video suggestions that you guys gave me is talking about home buying as well as home repayment. First things first, let me introduce myself. My name is Jen Ngumalo. If you are new here and you like my content, please make sure that you join us by clicking that red subscribe button on the bottom, and also don't forget to smash that like button because it does help with the YouTube algorithm. Another thing also, I'm not a property buying expert, and so I am not going to be sharing tips and tricks on how to buy property, like where are good properties, all that stuff, good locations and all that. I'm not going to do that because I am not a property buying expert. I'm not an expert in any of the things that I talk about, but I don't want this video to come across as me attracting people to start asking me about where to buy. Please do not do that. I'm just going to be coming on the angle of the financial part in terms of what you need to do before you get into this property buying process, because it is a big decision to buy property and something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And so I'm going to be covering the part of the financial side, and then now let's say you are already owning property and you've decided that okay, you want to start paying it off. Then I'm going to be sharing with you my 2 cents on what you need to do before you even embark on the process. So let us get into it. First things first, let's talk about the pressure that most of us we put under when it comes to wanting to buy a property. I recently did a reel and a TikTok on this, talking about not putting yourself under pressure to want to buy property. Buying property is a big decision that should never be taken lightly. And so you need to be very mindful and don't put yourself under unnecessary pressure to want to buy property. It is not as what it seems. And I know that as I'm saying this, on the other side of being a property owner or having a home, it may come across as if I'm discouraging you. But honestly, I just want you to be mindful before you get into this process and before you even put yourself under unnecessary pressure. So here's the thing. I'm sure you guys have seen the rise of the cost of living. It is insane. The inflation is insane, which has led to high interest rates as well. Now, because of all of those things, buying property right now is very expensive. The property prices on their own, they're very expensive. The repayments are very expensive because the interest rates are high. Couple the part of the price of property as well as the interest rate. That on its own needs you to make sure that when you get into this, you are really clued up about your finances, and your finances are straight cuts and like good. So do not rush this process. It's not something that you can just decide today and then tomorrow. It's a process that you have to work on over time, especially when it comes to your finances. And so do not put yourself under unnecessary pressure to want to be a property owner if you know exactly that your finances right now are not ready for it. Now, let's say, for instance, you really want to buy a property and you just want to know what you need to do in order for you to be able that you are entering into this, making wise decisions and just being clued up. The first thing that I would say is you need to fix your credit score as well as your finances. When I say your credit score is where you check your credit behavior in terms of the credit that you have. Are you paying it on time? That is what it measures, your behavior around credit. So you do not want to have any orders, any blacklisting, anything that is put under your name. So you need to make sure that your credit record is kind of clean. And also your credit score must be high, because if your credit score is high, then you are more likely to get a reasonable interest rate, because when you are buying a property, you really want to start at the bottom when it comes to how much banks are offering as a base for interest whenever you are buying property. Like, you want to be very close to that. So just be mindful of that. You need to make sure that your credit score is good, because right now you don't want to be gambling with a bad credit score and going to buy property. Because let's say, for instance, you buy property and your credit score is not good. The next thing a bank gives you on an interest rate of like 16%. That would be insane and very heavy. So already you are starting at a very high repayment. And so now imagine with the interest rate hikes like it has been happening, what will end up happening. And so you just need to make sure that you fix your credit score. Your credit score must be really good so that when you start approaching banks for this, you are likely to get a good interest rate. The next thing, fix your finances. When I say fix your finances, do not rush to buy a property just because you have been renting a property. You have been renting and you've been paying 5.5 here, and you feel like, okay, now it's time for me to buy property. No. Do not do that. Yes, you have this 5,500 that you can say, okay, I can channel this towards buying property. But the cost of property, guys, is not just the part of the bond repayment. Let me just break it down to you in terms of my cost. Firstly, for my bond, I pay 7,000. That's my bond. But obviously, I've been adding. But the interest rate has been going up to a point whereby on the last statement that I was sent by the bank, I am now going to be paying 6,800. So you can just imagine how much it has risen to eat up all that additional 1,000 that I added. So right now, I'm paying 7,000 on my property. And then add the rates and levies. That is 908 per month. So that is like what now? That is what 7,980. Then add water and electricity, roughly it's 1,000. So that is how much now? That is 8,980 roughly. So I am very close to reaching 10,000 in this 2-bedroom 60 something square meter property of mine. And so you can't just look at buying property and just think of only the bond. So right now, if you are paying 5,000 something on your rent, you can't just look at that also. And then over and above, when I say fix your finances also, you don't want to be going into buying property with a lot of baggage. And when I say a lot of baggage, I mean a lot of debt. You want to minimize the amount of debt as much as possible, because as the interest rate go up, the inflation go up, what it does is on the debt, on all the debts that you owe, the cost of you having that debt goes up. And so you don't want to be having a home loan here, a credit card here, store accounts here, a car here, all these things, and then the interest rates are going up, and all of these repayments have to go up because you was karma. You will be feeling like you are drowning in your own life. So please do not come into property buying with a lot of baggage. First, clean up your debts. If you've got store accounts, get rid of those store accounts. If you've got credit cards, I would really suggest that you get rid of some of those credit cards. Maybe you can stay with a personal loan, depending on how much interest rate you are paying on that personal loan and how much you are owing. If you are likely to finish that personal loan in in a year's time or 2 years' time, then maybe yes, you can keep it while just paying additional to it, so that obviously you don't want to be paying things. You don't want to be tackling a lot of debts all at a short amount of time when you want to buy a property, because that's going to decrease your credit score. So while you are clearing out your store accounts and what and closing them, that's really not going to hurt your credit score that much. It's not. I've done it. It didn't hurt my credit score that much, because so long as you have your other debts, so let's say for instance you've got a personal loan or you've got a car, you just maintain your repayments there and just put in extra there if you want, but just make sure that you are paying on time for all the other debts. But just make sure that you do not come into property buying with a lot of baggage. And once you have decided that you want to pay off this debt, you pay them off and then give yourself a break. Give yourself a time frame of at least 6 months, a minimum of 6 months, because your credit rec, I would say it tends to adjust after 6 to 12 months. And so after you've paid off these store accounts and some of these credit cards, and then you wait for 6 to 12 months for your credit score to kind of adjust back and just get back to the groove of it being a good credit score. So that is what you want to do. And also the reason why I'm saying fix your finances is because once you've fixed your finances, what it does is it gives you more money that you can actually say that, okay, this is money that I can save. Like, for example, I would really not encourage someone who wants to buy a house now. Yes, they are renting. Say for instance, they are renting 6,000 wherever they are renting. However, they've got debts name, and then right now they can't save. Like, you can't even save, put away a minimum of 2,000 per month. If you are in that position right now, buying a property will not be wise, because you will be looking at your finances currently, which already they are not looking good. So you, as much as, even if your finances are looking good now, but you want to make sure that, okay, down the line, 5 to 10 years from now, I am still going to be fine with this decision. Be it that I do not get any promotion. Do not rely on promotions. Do not rely on notches that we get at work. Do not rely on those things. Rely on the fact that your finances are looking so good now, and you trust that your financial behavior will keep you in line to make sure that even down the line, you'll still be able to manage these repayments. And so the reason why I'm saying I would not encourage someone to buy a property right now if you cannot even save is because when the interest rates goes up, like it has been going, like there was a time whereby the interest rates were going down when we're in lockdown because they were trying to stimulate the economy, and we're all celebrating because we're paying the smallest amount. However, things changed now, where now there was no more lockdown. We're all back, and everyone was participating in the economy, and they tried to decrease that demand by increasing the inflation, which has resulted to the price hikes, which has resulted as well to the interest rate hikes. And so you don't want to be buying property now if you know that you cannot even save, because when that time comes where by now you've bought your property, you are affording it. When you bought it, you could pay less than 6,000. Maybe let's say you are paying 5.5 on your property, and then the interest rates start going up. When the interest rates start going up, your affordability is maxed and beyond. Now, how do you then cope when it's beyond? How do you then survive when it's beyond? Be it that right now we know that most companies, even government, they don't want to give real they don't want to give real increases. What we get is peanuts. How do you then survive? Because now that increase that you're getting of like 800, it's not just going to be eaten by the bond, whereby now you have to keep increasing on the bond, but then now you are competing with the cost of living. Buying groceries is becoming expensive. How do you then split this 800 to make sure that it makes sense in all of your costs? So you see what I mean? But if you are able to save right now more than 2,000 per month, and then you go into buying property, it's better because you've got some money that you can say this is disposable income. So be it that the interest rates start going up, you know that you can tap into your savings and decrease the amount of money that you're saving per month in order for you to help you when it comes to paying your bond. And so fix your finances, fix your credit score. Do not go into this if those two things are not ready. The second thing is prepare for additional cost. Buying property is not just going and saying, I want to buy this property. There are other costs that come with buying property. When I bought my property, did not even plan for the transfer cost, and those are lawyer fees. I did not prepare for that, and those are dependent. The amount that you pay on that is dependent on the price of the property, and so please don't ask me how much you need to save for that, because I wouldn't know it. It's dependent on the amount of property, and the lawyers will tell you that it's not something that you will go in knowing that, oh, for this property, this is how much I must likely prepay. It depends on the lawyers and also the cost of your property. So I did not prepare for that. I did not save for that. I had no savings whatsoever. I ended up having to dip into my credit card in order for me to pay for those things. Now, what helped me when it comes to being able to manage with this rise of the cost of living, the interest rates and all the stuff, is that I quickly dealt with my debts. When I got my property, I then quickly dealt with my debts, which was my personal loan and the credit cards, so that I can breathe. And because I was able to do that with the rise of the interest rates, the cost of living, if I'm being honest, I am, as much as it's really annoying to go to the shops and realize how much you have to pay for eggs and how much you have to pay for oil and all the other stuff, and also how much my house is costing me per month, it is annoying when I see all of that. But it's not like I am not surviving. Like, at the end of the day, I have to buy the eggs, I have to buy the oil, I have to buy all these things, I have to pay for my house. And even in that process, it's not like I am drowning in it. It's like I'm doing just fine. And that is because I cleared all of these debts that were chowing away on my disposable income. And so you want to be doing that. But over and above, I don't want to just lay it flat like that. But over and above is I have now additional income, like YouTube money, like that YouTube money really does help to beef up my budget per month. So you really want to make sure that when you are buying, you plan ahead. So there are transfer costs, start saving for those. Start saving for those so that you know that even if, let's say, for instance, you go into property buying and maybe you've only saved about 20,000, at least it's a start that you can then get other funds from the credit cards, wherever, just to beef up that to be the total that is needed for your property. And then the second thing is the other costs, such as electricity setup. When I got here and I needed to set up electricity, and I didn't even know this, I needed a deposit of 2,000. And most of the time you don't know these things because you are thinking, I just need to go buy property and then I'll be fine. The next thing they tell you, we need 37,000 or we need 45,000, and you're like, I don't have that. And then when you come in the house, now they tell you, for us to set up your electricity, we need a deposit of this much. I paid 2,000 for a deposit, and I know that even with the municipality as well, there is a deposit for that. If it's municipality or ESCOM, I know that there is a deposit for that. And so these are things that you just have to prepare for. If it's possible, save as much as you can now. And so if right now you want to buy property, you are renting, but you can't save, guys, please do not put yourself under pressure to want to buy property. It should be that right now, as much as you want to buy property, you are paying for the rent, but still you are able to save, because those savings are the things that are going to help you when you actually buying the property itself and when you are settling in. But if you are struggling to save even right now, please do not put yourself under pressure to buy property. Renting right now is much better than buying. Ask anyone who is a homeowner, they will tell you renting right now is better than having property. And I'm going to keep it real with you, because the cost of property right now is very insane. And so just please do not put yourself under that pressure. Now, let's say, for instance, you are ready to buy. You have saved up. You have decided that, okay, this is how much money you have when it comes to saving. Now, what do you need to do? First thing is you need to check your affordability. So there are bond originators that can actually help you with this. And also you can do this with your bank as well. They can just check for you, especially like with banks such as FNB, ABSA, Nedbank, and Standard Bank. They can do this for you, where they check your affordability, looking at your current income, your responsibilities as well. So when they say to you, you afford a property of 1 million, please hear me right when I say this. When they say you afford a property of 1 million, please do not go and buy a property of 1 million. Like, do not do that. That is the worst financial mistake that you can make. Do not do that. Whether the economy is good, whether the economy is bad, do not do that. You never do that. If the bank, because that is an estimate. Firstly, it's an estimate. If they say you qualify for a million house, you also do not go and buy a house of 950,000. You don't do that. You want to be as low as possible when it comes to your affordability. If they say a million, buy a house that is 800,000 or less. Probably a much better place to start is looking for a house that is 750,000 and above. If they say you qualify for a house that is of 1.7 million, do not go buying a house of 1.7 million. Go and start looking at houses of 1.3, 1.4. That should be your playing area, because you don't want to max your affordability when you get into property ownership. Because as the prices go up, the interest rate goes up. What it'll do is it'll it will become too much to pay for that house, because you won't manage paying for it. And so you don't want to be maxing your affordability as you are coming in. You want to get there and buy a property that is very reasonable. When I bought my property, they told me that I afford a house of 800 and something thousand. And then I was like, I'm definitely not going to go anywhere closer to that. And I started looking at property that were between 500,000 and 600,000. You see, 800,000, and already I'm looking at houses between 500,000 and 600,000. And I got this house, it was selling for 600,000, and I negotiated and got it for 550,000 instead of the 600,000. So I still saved 50,000. from what it was selling for. But more than anything, see the difference here. I qualify for 800,000, I bought for 600,000. There's a 200,000 gap in between there, which has made it for me, which is why also it hasn't been a burden for me to own this property and to pay for this property each and every month in the midst of the interest rate hikes, because I can afford it. Okay, another thing that I shared when I spoke about me buying property, and there's an old video, and I shared the importance of knowing what you want when you go into buying property. Now that you have fixed your finances and all the stuff, and you are clear about how much you afford, and you know, okay, that I'm going to look at houses from this price range to this price range, please now sit down and decide what you want in a house. And this is the part whereby you really have to be strict with yourself in not adding things that will end up adding on the cost of the property that you can buy. So the most important thing when it comes to buying property that will help you even in the long term is location. You want to make sure that wherever you are buying, the location is perfect. If you've got kids, there must be a lot of public schools around, not just a place whereby there are just no schools at all. Like there are areas in Pretoria that are just not good when it comes to having a lot of schools. And so you don't want to be buying in an area where it doesn't have a lot of public schools. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure that it is close to a lot of public schools, at least 3 public schools. And also with the location, you want it to be accessible to shopping centers or to closer to town. If it's not closer to town, it must be accessible to shopping centers. So it's the schools, the shopping centers, because those are the things that you are going to need the most. And you don't want to be driving a long distance going to the shops. I just feel like it's just not practical. Another thing is it must be close to public transport. Even if you've got a car, you still want it to be close to public transport. Like for example, where I stay, it's suburbs, and there are no taxis that pick up people or drop people around here. However, it's a walking distance to the bus station. It's a walking distance to the taxis. When the buses are striking, I can take a taxi to work, and then also I can request if I want. But for a long time, I've been using public transport here, and it has been working fine for me. I had no complaints whatsoever. I actually like the fact that it's a place that is not busy. Even though I have to walk to get a taxi, I would prefer to walk than to have a lot of taxis hooting around on the streets. So those are things that you just have to think about. And then the last thing would be size. If you really want to grow into that family, in growing that property, then you can look into that in terms of how much space do you need for that property. So now you have bought your property, you've been staying in it for a while, and you've decided that, you know what, it is time for you to pay it off. These are things that I think that you need to consider before you embark in that decision. There's nothing wrong with paying off property. Like, it's something that I feel like every one of us should strive for, because when you pay off any form of debt much quicker, it helps you to save in the long run in terms of the amount of money that you're going to end up paying on the interest rate. However, when it comes to property, because guys, let's first just look at this. Paying off property, there's no rush in paying off property because of the nature of it. When it comes to roof over your head, it's something that you always have. So if you're not renting, you could be a homeowner. I would say there really isn't a rush in paying off property. However, if you've decided that you really want to pay it off, these are 2 things that I really think that you need to consider. So the first one is to not pay the minimum. Like, even when you get your property and they say you pay 5,000, always add 500 rands extra. Even when you have no intentions of like rushing to pay it off, just always don't pay the minimum when it comes to your property, because the extra that you are putting each and every month is going to help you to decrease the number of years that you're going to have to end up paying for that house. The accumulation of all that amount of all that money that you're adding each and every month may lead up decreasing about 5 years into your bond repayment. you may never know. And so just make sure that you do not pay the minimum, you always add extra. And then the second thing that I would say you need to do or you need to consider is, before you get into trying to pay off property, please make sure that you have done the next two things. The first one is you have saved up your emergency fund. You have a fully funded emergency fund. If you do not have a fully funded emergency fund, there is no need in you rushing to pay off the house, because you are putting yourself under risk of that when things happen. Let's say, for instance, you've got a house or something happens into your house. Maybe it's not covered, or maybe in your car there's an excess, and then now you need to pay that money and you do not have it. What you will do is you end up falling in the lap of credit. And so please make sure that you save up for an emergency fund. It's just better to do that knowing that at least you've got 3 to 6 months of your emergency fund before you rush into paying off your property. And that is why I started with, there is no rush in trying to pay off property, because either way, if you are not renting, if you are not paying for property, you could be renting unless you've paid it off. But either way, paying for shelter is something that just comes with the responsibilities that we have. But if you've got the means that you really want to pay off your property now, like maybe let's say you've gotten a promotion, first thing that I would say is use that money that you've gotten for a promotion to save and quickly build up your emergency fund. Once you've built up your emergency fund to at least 3 to 6 months of your emergency fund, maybe let's say 4 months, depending on the sector that you are in, then you can then start saying, okay, now I'm going to start attacking my bond. But do not do this if you don't have an emergency fund. Second thing, if you've got kids, please make sure that you have investments for these kids. You are saving for these kids and you are saving for the future education of these kids. One of the mistakes that parents make is they get so focused on them and the part of surviving now and living now, that they forget that these kids are going to grow up and go to university. It is your responsibility to make sure that the child is set up for the future. And so you don't want to take that responsibility and give it to someone else. And so just please make sure that you have your emergency fund and you are investing for your child. A minimum of 500 rands per month can go a long way for your child, especially if you start early. Now, saving 500 rands per month and then you wanting to pay off your house really is not going to stop you in that process. You can still do this thing. You can do all of these at the same time. And then when you then push off your house, then eventually when you pay it off, you can take some of that money and channel it towards your child's investments, so that you build it up to be a much higher, much higher than what it would be if you just invested a minimum of 500 rands per month until they get to the age of going to university. That is all that I wanted to talk to you guys about when it comes to property buying, as well as just paying it off. And when it comes to paying off the property, one of the things that one of this lady shared with me at work, because she bought her property. When she bought it, she put a deposit of over 100K, and then she finished her house in less than 10 years, I think. Yeah, she finished it in or maybe around 15 years, but she finished it very quick, I think about 10 years. And what she shared with me when it comes to paying off property is, when they say, for instance, you have to pay 6,000, you pay 6,000, which is deducted, and then you wait 7 days, and then you put in the extra. So let's say, for instance, you now have 4,000 that you want to put in extra into your house. Do not add that into your installment. Do not add that in your automatic installment that is deducted. First, let them take the money that they normally take, and then put in for that extra amount that you want to put in, the 2,000, that 3,000, that 4,000 that you want to put in to attack your bond. That's going to help, because that money is going to go straight to the principal and not the interest. That is one way that she shared with me that works better, because when you attack the principal, it helps to decrease the amount of money that you owe much faster, which limits the amount of interest that you're going to pay in the long run. That is one thing that I can tell when it comes to paying off property. And I know that if I do get to the stage whereby I say I want to pay off property, that's definitely the strategy I will use. And also just saving and investing. And then if I feel like, okay, I've got 50K, let's say, for instance, for people that get bonuses, like taking a chunk of that bonus and throwing it into your property can be one way of just killing it much quicker as well, over and above adding money each and every month. So now when I get to that stage, I will be adopting different strategies, obviously, but I feel like the one of paying after the 7th, after they've deducted, waiting 7 days and then paying into it, it just helps to attack the principal instead of the interest. With that being said, I'm going to stop right here. I hope that this video was helpful, insightful, but more than anything, the crux of this I want you to take away from this is, do not put yourself under pressure to want to own property right now. The economy is crazy. Everything is just crazy expensive. Do not do that, right? Do not put yourself under that unnecessary pressure. If you really feel that, okay, your finances are good right now, you are at a right place, maybe you just got a promotion and you really want to buy property, then maybe just make sure that you follow some of the things, make sure that you adopt some of the things that I shared here with me. Obviously, there are other things. Apparently, there's a book that talks about property buying that was written by a South African author. I don't know what is the name, but look into such books because they're going to help you in terms of navigating a property buying process. As I said, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just sharing my little bit of knowledge and things that I've heard from other people, that I've learned from other people that have succeeded in these things, in terms of paying off property, buying property, and the things that I observe as a homeowner myself. And I'm sharing those things and packaging them to you as this video, but it does not make me an expert when it comes to these things. With that being said, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.